crew, I think we got a good one. Griselda on Netflix proves why the real Griselda was the baddest chick in the game. Hey, what's up and hello? This is the Chris Nicole giving you my views on life, love, and the world of entertainment through my eyes. And this is my review on Griselda, Season 1, Episode 1, Lady Comes to Town. I've mentioned Griselda before. I believe I compared her to Raquel on Raising Kanan. For those who don't know, look her up. This show is based off of a real woman. Her name was Griselda Blanco, okay? She was truly one of the top. I don't think there's any other woman that compares to her, but hey, if anybody knows, by all means, let me know. But she was truly one of the top people in organized crime in the history of this country and her country in Colombia, okay? I've seen documentaries on her, and Netflix has decided to do a scripted version of her story. And when I tell you so far it's good, it's good. For those who haven't watched it, please watch it. I'm going to discuss episode 1 right now. But when I tell you, I think we got a good one. I think we have a good scripted television show to watch. So we start off with Griselda, and she is running into her mansion frantic. And this is 1978, before she permanently moved to the US for good. And she's running in. We don't see what's going on, but then immediately we see that she has red sauce, and bear with me, you guys, because there's only certain words I think they allow in the algorithm. She has red sauce on her hands, so we automatically say, okay, some type of craziness has happened. She rushes into the bathroom, where we see that it appears to be that she got grazed, okay, by some steel. She got grazed, and it's pretty much red sauce everywhere. So she's cleaning herself up. Next thing you know, she calls her friend, and it's a woman, and she's asking her for a big favor. She wakes up her 3 sons. 2 of them appear to be older and adults, or at least teenagers. The other one is little. And she tells them to pack immediately. And they're headed to the airport. And she tells her sons that her and Alberto, which is her husband, are getting a divorce. And they are moving to Miami. Now, interesting enough, at this point, we don't see Alberto. We don't know where he is. But this is what she's telling the kids. And she's scared, she's frantic, and even before she leaves the mansion, she makes sure she looks out to see if nobody is like checking for her or following her. They get to Miami, and they go from a mansion to a normal house in Miami. And of course, her kids are like, what the hell is going on? That whole entire house is probably the size of one of their bedrooms. And they are told that they all need to share one room. Griselda and her 3 boys, okay? So Griselda and her friend who offered up her home, her name is Carmen. And that's the house that she's staying in, Carmen's house. And they go to dinner, and we find out that both of them were wives of men who were in the game. Okay? Follow me, y'all. Y'all know what game it is. And so both were in toxic relationships. Carmen got out, left her man, and started her own legit travel agent business. But she's nervous because even one of Griselda's boys picked up that she don't really want us here. Carmen is nervous because while Griselda claims that she has left Alberto, her man that was in the game, she's worried that Griselda's going to stay in the game. Okay? And we clearly all know from the documentary she had every right to be nervous because Griselda was not going to give up. And so, but Griselda swears she has left the life and she just wants to work with her friend at her travel agency. But late that night, after they get back, we see that she lied her ass off. Why? Because next thing you know, we hear the Scarface music, and we know when we hear the Scarface music what that means. The world is yours in the sky. Next thing you know, she pulls out a bag, and we see this big old key of Coca-Cola chilling in one of her kids' bags. So she definitely is not out of the game. So then Griselda calls her accountant, and his name is Arturo. And Arturo is clearly nervous to even hear from her because he's like, you know that they're looking for you. His people are looking for you. So at that point, we're like, okay, this must be about Alberto. Okay. So she pretty much calls Arturo. Arturo don't even want to know where she's at, but she tells him anyways. And she's like, and he's like, damn it. Like, I don't want to know where you're at, but she's like, remember that guy? I need to find out that place that he was at, or whatever the case may be. I need to find out. I need to sell something. She pretty much gets the information from him and she hangs up the phone. So Griselda goes to the place, which is a disco, and she bumps into this Spanish guy who kind of looks like Richard Pryor. So I'm going to call him the Spanish Richard Pryor. And she makes sure that she makes the connect with him, and she gives him a taste of her product. And from there, he introduces her to the boss, the head man in charge, who is his boss as well. And she's trying to get the head guy to taste her product, and he kind of blows it off. He blows that sugar for the boogers off of her hand and is like, what am I going to do with one key? I need volume. Like, that's what I need. And so at that point, the guy, who introduced her, the Richard Pryor guy, he felt embarrassed because, of course, Griselda kind of went past him and was kind of being snarky and talking mess about him to the head guy, and he didn't like it. So next thing you know, Griselda goes outside after she gets dismissed by the head guy, and the Spanish Richard Pryor decides to stick her up, okay, and take her Coca-Cola. All right. So at that point, Griselda is back at square one. Then we get a flashback of Griselda with Alberto. Okay. And this is literally the night before, I guess, everything went down, before she had to leave Colombia. And at that point, Alberto tells her they have lost 2 shipments in New York. And he takes her to, I guess, what would be considered the head guy in charge in Colombia. And he tells her that he needs for her to wipe his debt clean. Okay? And what I mean by that is she needs to use her woman abilities, catch my drift. She needs to give herself up to wipe out his debt. Mind you, this is her husband, all right? Then, on top of that, the head guy is his own brother. His own brother. And he even says in the car, he's always had a thing for you. This will wipe our debt clean. So we see from the beginning how Griselda is treated as a woman in this business, a woman, period, but especially how she's treated as a woman in this business. She is definitely seen as someone who is just supposed to be pretty, shut up, help. And if I need you in any way, you're supposed to just do what you're supposed to do. So we see that immediately. One thing that I do not like about the casting is the lady who is playing Griselda. I definitely have seen her and stuff before, beautiful woman, but Griselda had always been a thicker woman. She's always been a thicker woman. I would have loved to see an actual woman who was thicker, a bigger woman playing Griselda, because Griselda, from the pictures that I've seen, even when she was like younger and her kids were younger, she always was a thicker woman. This woman isn't thick, she's fit, she's tall, total opposite of Griselda. From my understanding, Griselda was not only short, but she was, a healthier lady as well. But moving on. So at that point, Griselda ends up following the Spanish Richard Pryor, and she sees that he is trying to sell her product on the side to some random guy. And when he comes out of the club, baby, she takes a bat to him and she is like, give me my stuff and give me a meeting with that guy that you are meeting with or you just met with, or I'm going to tell your boss about your side business. Because, of course, he's doing this on the side. He didn't even bother, of course, going to the head guy that Griselda met. So, of course, reluctantly, he's like, fine, you bitch, whatever. So the Spanish Prior comes to Griselda's job, the travel agency, and blows up her spot in front of Carmen and says, you got your meeting. Oh, and by the way, Carmen, yeah, your friend is selling Coca-Cola. All right. And Carmen is like, you're fired, you lying heifer. You brought this stuff into my house. Griselda tells her it's only one time. And Carmen is like, you can't let it go. Like, you can't let it go. Some people keep telling themselves it's only one time and they continue. And you just have to go. You got to get the hell up out of my house. So Griselda ends up going to the guy. She met a guy in a diner who just so happened to be Colombian also, who was washing dishes and getting treated horribly at his job. And so she ends up going to him and asking him to pretend to be her muscle at her meeting that she's going to have with this guy. And I think eventually what we're going to see is that he is going to be her real muscle. He's going to be her real right hand man as far as getting the dirty work done. And I want to say he represents one of the guys in one of the documentaries that I saw. I think that's the guy that they are trying to compare this guy to in the show. So at that point, she has her meeting, and of course, the guy who washes dishes goes with her, and she ends up selling her product for $20,000. But of course, she's a woman, and this guy that she sells her product to, they call him Bird. And I guess the reason why they call him Bird is because he has a bigger nose that kind of looks like, I guess, a bird nose. So that's why they call him Bird. And while he says, okay, deal, because at first she asked for 25 and he said, man, screw you. I literally get product now for 18K. And she's like, yeah, but you can only cut it once. My product, you can cut it 2 or 3 times. And so he was like, all right, 19. She said 20. They made a deal. But he was like, but I want you to do one thing. I want you to touch it. And she's like, and I was like, oh, here we go. And she was like, touch your nose? And he's like, yeah, touch my nose slowly. And so she touches his nose and she's like, oh, yeah, that's a nice nose. But I've had better, I've seen better. And literally at that point, he starts laughing because he's like, oh, she got some big kahunas. She's no joke. It was still very perv-like, but at the end of the day, this just shows what Griselda is going to have to go through. So we're probably going to see this throughout the series until people fear her. And then they won't disrespect her because she's a woman. So at that point, he's like, let's celebrate, let's dance. They dance a little bit. And next thing you know, you guys, the most chaotic, crazy scene. I can't even go into detail as to what happened, but when I tell you this scene, it's crazy, but the visuals of it it will blow your mind. So make sure you watch it. But literally everyone in the room is eliminated in like 30 seconds. Except like everybody's gone except for Griselda and her guy who she I think thinks at one point he's gone, but we find out later on he's not gone. He's still alive. And so she ends up hiding. She has red sauce all over her face. She ends up hiding. And the next thing you know, one of the guys from the club, the disco, where she met Spanish Richard Pryor, he walks in after everything is over, takes the key from the table while Griselda is hiding and says, go home, lady, and just leaves. He takes the product and leaves, but she still has her money. So then after that, we get another flashback with Griselda after Griselda gave herself up to Alberto's brother. Like, I can't believe I'm saying that, but yes, after Griselda gave herself up to Alberto's brother, she's distraught, of course. She feels violated. She feels used. She goes to her husband, tells her husband that it's done. This fool has the nerve to say, "Did you enjoy it?" And she was like, "I can't believe you asked me that. I can't believe you asked me to do that. And I can't believe I agreed to it." So at that point, she's fed up and she tells him that she is leaving him. And he pretty much can't take it. He's like, "My family runs this city." And she's like, "Then I'll leave this city." And he was like, "You can't go anywhere. F you, F your kids." And once he said, "F your kids," all right, at that point, Griselda becomes Griselda. Griselda pulls out steel to Alberto and unalives him. So we know what happened to him now. He's gone. She ends up getting grazed because Alberto's muscle hits her before she unalives him too. Okay, so that's why we saw her in the beginning and she was frantic because at that point, she pretty much off the made man. She got to get the hell up out of there. So she is covered in red sauce. We're back to the present now after the whole hit came about. She has red sauce all over her face, and y'all know she ends up going to the disco to meet with the head guy that she met with the Spanish Richard Pryor. Now, Spanish Richard Pryor and everybody else in that room besides Griselda, and like I said, her guy is gone. So at that point, she ends up going back to the disco, and the guy who told her to go home is the first one to approach her and said, "I told you to go home." And Griselda is like, "I'm not going anywhere until I speak to your boss." So at that point, the boss approaches her and he was like, "Yeah, you look messy." And she was like, "Yeah, whatever. Look, I will be here every single night until you tell me yes. You need to try my product." He tries it. He's like, "It's excellent." And she was like, "Look, I may look like a house mom with red sauce all over my face, but I literally used to do this back and forth from Colombia to New York for 10 years. You definitely need to give me an opportunity because I have the best product in the game." And the guy is like, "Okay, fine. You get one shot. You double my supply next month, I'll make you my supplier." And they shake hands. And that's how Griselda gets into the game in Miami on her own. So, this is the first episode. What do I rate this episode? An A plus. I literally was glued to it from beginning to end. Great writing, great visuals, and I like true crime. So at the end of the day, I know about Griselda Blanco. I've watched the documentaries. I've even watched documentaries on people who used to work with Griselda Blanco. For those who are interested in those type of stories or just love good scripted television, I highly recommend that you watch this and then we can have some great dialogue. So, with that being said, for those who have watched it, what did you think about this first episode? Please like, share, and subscribe, and I will see you on my next video. Toodles.